If I told you that globally 18% of children, adolescents and youth aged 6 to 17 years old were not in any form of education in 2017, what would you think? Maybe you'd say 18% isn't a larger percentage. Actually, that's 262 million children. The Education for All policy aims to tackle just that. This presentation aims to explore the effectiveness of low-cost private schools in regard to the Education for All campaign. Many questions surround the field of low-cost private schools and their ability to provide better education. Are they effective for achieving a fairer education amongst all children? Do low-cost private schools create economic divides between working-class and middle-class families? Do they cause social divides between classes? And why do children in the UK attend low-cost private schools as opposed to public state schools? Firstly, it is important to understand what the Education for All campaign is and what it aims to achieve. The Education for All movement is a campaign run by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation, also known as UNESCO. The UNESCO campaign is the only United Nations agency with a mandate to cover all aspects of education. They believe education is a human right. They are not wrong. In 2015, the heads of state and government, along with the senior UN officials and representatives of civil society, assembled what is known as the Sustainable Development Goals. As expressed by UNESCO, these objectives form a programme of sustainable, universal and ambitious development, conceived with the active participation of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation. There are 17 active Sustainable Development Goals, some of which include an end to world hunger, gender equality across the globe, and to ensure every person is provided with clean water and sanitation. Sustainable Development Goal 4 specifically looks at education across the world and aims to ensure every child is provided with quality education. But just how achievable is this goal? The latest statistics shared by the United Nations Development Programme show that 57 million primary-age children still remain out of school. 103 million youth worldwide lack basic literacy skills, and more than 60% of them are women, according to UN officials. Although these figures are still immensely high, UN officials do state that the enrolment figures amongst primary education in developing countries has risen to 91%. The worldwide number of children out of school has dropped by almost half, expressing that these are remarkable successes. Moving forward, the United Nations Development Programme, along with UNESCO, state they will achieve Sustainable Development Goal 4 by 2030. They have a set number of targets to help them achieve Goal 4, such as ensuring that all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood development care so that they are ready to go on to primary education. Another target is to ensure that all youth and a substantial proportion of adults, including both men and women, achieve literacy and numeracy. And another being their main goal, to ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable and quality primary and secondary education. The key word in that statement being free. Why are low-cost private schools being considered as a solution for developing countries and families in poverty? It seems obscure to me that conflict-affected countries with the poorest families are being expected to pay for their education when other parts of the world are provided with free state education. Surely it's those families and those children that are in desperate need of a free education. James Tooley was the first person to produce research on low-cost private schools. These low-cost private schools are intended to provide a high-quality educational service at an affordable rate. In the UK, James Tooley intends on opening a chain of low-cost private schools in the poorest areas of the UK, which will average around £50 a week. Does this sound like a fair rate? Well, the UK have free public schools, so why do families need to pay for their child's education if they have the option to go to a public state school? As expressed by UNESCO, education is a human right, and all children should be provided with a free quality education. My argument against James Tooley's idea of low-cost private school is that the money spent in order to create these low-cost private schools, to get them up and running, could go into public state schools to provide them with better equipment and better education, so that all children get the opportunity to receive a better education. Some families have no choice but to send their children to a public school, because that £50 a week could go to their food allowance. It could also be their fuel allowance that gets their children to and from school. Nevertheless, £50 a week is a lot of money for some families, which they should not have to spend on providing their children with an education. James Tooley states how just one of these schools would require an £8 million investment. That's £8 million that could be invested into building free state schools, providing higher quality education for the poorest families around the world. £8 million could build hundreds of schools and even pay teachers' wages, and that's just the cost of one low-cost private school. If that money were to be invested in UK government schools, the likelihood is that more children would have a better education because the money would be spent on the lowest achieving schools, the schools and the children who need it. According to James Tooley's statistics, he states that families are likely to have up to £72 per child available after paying for necessities, including food, clothing, housing, utilities and more. What seems strange to me is that these statistics do not share what part of the country these families were living in as part of the data collection. It doesn't share how much the living costs are, and it also doesn't share whether or not these families all have full-time jobs or what their careers are. So what are these statistics actually based off? To me, it seems quite ignorant to assume that every family in the UK living in poorer areas are likely to have £72 free per child to allow them to have a better quality education. James Tooley expresses that the lowest attainment figures come from those living in the poorest areas of the UK. With that being said, shouldn't this fall back onto teachers and investing money into better quality and better training facilities for teachers? According to UNESCO, in around a third of countries, less than 75% of primary school teachers are trained according to national standards. Surely, if more money is spent on high quality training, this would reflect in attainment figures. It would also provide better quality education for the public schools in poorer areas. Tooley has also operated these low-cost private schools in India, Ghana and Nigeria, being some of the poorest countries in the world. Focus should not be on marketisation, but more on providing these children with quality education for free. Providing these countries with free state education could also help with Sustainable Development Goal 1, no poverty across the world. Providing these children with an education can lead to higher success rates and better quality of life. Most of these families in deprived living circumstances save up their entire lives just to let their children go to school for a few weeks. A sickening thought. If the UK can provide a public state education, then that should be admired. The costs should go into providing the same education across the globe to ensure that every child has a chance, so that every child has the same opportunities and quality education. With all this being said, my viewpoints stand with UNESCO. I believe that all children deserve a quality education and it should most definitely be free. I do think private schools should not exist, but that is merely just my opinion. Private schools are funded by the richest families, and if they were to invest their money into public state schools and send their children to public state schools, then not only would their children still be receiving higher quality education, but so would their classmates, therefore achieving a higher quality education for all children across all schools.